Hello, friends, and welcome to a Friday edition. That's right. Is it Friday?
You know what? We had a discussion about this earlier, and Darin was shocked to learn it is, in fact, Friday.
It is, in fact,
all
Friday.
day.
We've lived a month this week.
Yes, we have.
There's been a lot going on, but welcome to the Friday edition of the Happy Half Hour Training Camp Daily. It's the end of a long week, or sort of the end of the long week. There's a bunch of stuff going on. Tomorrow,
days have no meaning.
Yeah, time loses all meaning during training camp. That is the truth. It is. It really does feel like we've been here a month. As much stuff has happened, because if you think back over the course of the last week, you find out that Taylor Moton and Ike Ekwonu are going to be out for a minute. You find out JC's cut his foot and isn't going to be able to practice. Then we go through Nick Scorton. And that was the big news out of today, as Dave Canales confirmed, as we all kind of suspected yesterday afternoon when we left the practice field, that Nick Scorton had, in fact, torn his ACL. He's going to be out for the season. Nick went on IR this morning, and it's just a gut punch for a football team.
Right.
It really is. It is. Nick is one of those guys. He is a good kid. He works hard, does everything the right way. Dave Canales just went on and on today about how Nick Scorton embodies everything that they want the team to be. And, oh, by the way, really good at football in a position of high value.
And you could kind of feel it a little at the beginning of practice today. Granted, the weather didn't help. It was foggy. You can always tell what kind of day it is when you can't see the top of the Bank of America or Wells Fargo buildings from the practice field. But it took a little bit of time to kind of shake some of that off, shake off that numbness. And then things got going, and the defense had a pretty good day. Yeah. We saw Travis Gibson, Thomas Incoom both kind of step in there. Princely Uman-Mielen had a decent day with a couple of sacks. Yeah. Or would-be, / training camp sacks.
Training camp sacks.
Would-be sacks in a game. And I think you're going to see those three guys, probably especially Princely, really be asked to step up. In fact, Dave Canales said, we're asking Princely to step up.
Yeah.
These are the things we need him to do to be ready and to fill this hole because, as you and I have kind of discussed, they've been playing around a lot with having three of those guys on the field at the same time.
Right.
And so you don't want to take a whole part of your playbook out because Nick Scorton's not available.
Right.
So someone's going to have to step up.
Yeah, they did a lot of stuff last year. In the little bit of time Pat Jones was playing last season, you saw a good bit of it. And Pat Jones is able to play first and second down out on the edge, rush from the edge. But on passing downs, on third downs, he'll slide inside next to Derek Brown.
Right.
And that's when you bring in a Princely behind him with Jalen Phillips on the other side. And then you've got speed up there. You've got the potential to rush from inside and out with those guys on the field. So whether it's Princely as that other guy or, they're looking for some of these other guys to contribute. Travis Gibson played well down the stretch for him last year, but it's going to be a group effort. It's going to have to be because, Nick was kind of that plug-and-play starter almost. Even though he didn't start immediately last year, by the end of the year, it felt like he had been here a couple, 3 years.
Right.
Speaking of time not having any meeting, Nick, in his maturity as a player, just felt like he had always been around a lot longer than he had. So it's going to take them a minute. I mean, it's early in camp. It's the first week in camp, obviously. They've got time to experiment, see what different guys are going to look like in different spots. But it's gonna obviously complicate things for the Carolina Panthers.
And a guy that we haven't mentioned yet, Cam Gill, who came back. Canales pointed out today he had a really good season in the UFL. He's been here before, so he's not walking in blind. He has some familiarity with everything going on with this system. And so that's who you have to lean on, or guys like that and options like that when something like this happens. But, yeah, good to have Cam Gill back in the building, too.
Yeah, Cam was here in 2024 when they were bringing guys in left and right throughout the course of the season. That defense was not maybe the most memorable in a good way, but he does have some familiarity with this system. Avera loves the human being, loves the player. So he did. He had a good season in the UFL, was the UFL Defensive Player of the Year. So congratulations to Cam Gill for that. And welcome back to town. He still got to wear his same jersey, number 49, and be a part of it all. But I do think, and one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit more about was kind of that reaction to. Canales talked about it today, about the way guys immediately went to Nick Scorton when he's sitting on the cart yesterday. And listen, if this turns into a Kelvin Benjamin type injury in 2015 where, the number one receiver blows an ACL in training camp, and everybody wondered how the Carolina Panthers were going to move the ball at all. Oh, by the way, they went 15-1, and Cam Newton won the MVP, went to the Super Bowl. If this turns into a Super Bowl run, I wonder if we're going to talk about, when we're writing the mythology of the 2026 Super Bowl Panthers, if that day yesterday, when Nick's sitting there on the cart and they basically call practice up and everybody marches up to him one at a time to give him a hug.
Right.
I mean, and it takes a long time for 80 or 90 dudes to walk up and give a guy a hug.
But it was important enough to do so.
And it was important. And, I mean, that was Dave Canales reading the room, understanding his people, understanding the impact that Nick Scorton has on everybody around him. And it really, I do think, I don't want to make too much of a small thing in the moment, but I'm wondering if months from now we're going to look back at a team that's doing some things and say there's a togetherness about this bunch that was evidenced when we saw them do that.
Yeah. And somebody that Nick is going to have at his disposal to lean on is Pat Jones, too. And Pat and Nick are really, really close. They vacationed together this summer. They spend a lot of time together. And if you remember, Pat, it was not an ACL, but Pat kind of found himself in this situation last year. He was excited to come in. He thought he was going to have a really, really good season. And then it was week 4, right, where he ended up having to after that game, he had to undergo back surgery because of what he ended up telling us today. The details of was wow, it is late on a Friday, herniated disc. Whew, that was rough.
There you go.
And a piece came off of it and was essentially pinching the nerves. And it was kind of, he couldn't figure out how to describe it, so he was just trying to like charades it out, but essentially it would give him like a dead leg with the nerves, and so had to undergo back surgery for that. Was out the rest of the season, and he stood there today and got pretty emotional talking about it, and he was like, this was one of the hardest things I've had to go through, but it was also one of the biggest blessings. And he talked about it being one of the hardest things he's had to go through because of the mental aspect of it, because there were so many expectations for himself coming into last season, and then to just have it all end that quickly, it was hard for him to grapple with for a while. But he talked about one of the biggest things that helped him was finding a way and a reason to still be in the locker room every day and to be around the guys. And he was like, that would kind of be my advice to Nick is make sure he surrounds himself with the rest of us so that he can stay a part of it, stay focused. He talked about the best thing that helped him while recovering was coming up here on Sundays for game days and being on the sideline to pour into Nick during the games. And he was like, that really helped. And so all of that to say, Nick has someone like Pat there next to him to kind of be like, I just went through this. You can trust me. You can listen to me. Like, let me help walk you through this.
That's what good teams do.
Right.
That's what good teams do. And they've got a lot of dudes. And that's one of the things that became evident, over the course of this practice today is more and more guys stepped up. I mean, a couple news and notes. Rob Hunt was out with a little back tightness. They're getting him checked out. Rob's walking around, looked a little stove up today on the sidelines. Mike Jack was not practicing today, also a little back tightness. They're getting both those guys looked at this afternoon. We'll see how they are. With those guys out, with Mike Jack out, all of a sudden that secondary is really young.
Yeah.
You got Corey Thornton, who's a second-year guy who played a handful of games before he got hurt last year, and then a rookie in Will Lee out there with the ones running around, and that defense made play after play after play.
Did.
Shaw Smith-Wade got him a pick, went the distance with it early in practice, and then late in practice.
Very last play.
Late in practice, they did 2-minute situations, and every segment, the ones versus ones, twos versus twos, threes versus threes, defense wins all three. And Will Lee in the one versus one segment picks off Bryce Young into practice and, gets up, celebrates, punts the ball, blow the horn, and we go. I mean, Dave Canales called it the play of the day. And as it turns out, we have a segment on Panthers.com called Play of the Day. So
thanks for that, Dave.
We appreciate the free promotion, Dave Canales. That was very team-oriented of you to help us out and tee it up for us that way. So that defense is making more plays. And I don't want, you always hear certain things about this. I don't want to draw too big of a conclusion from the second day of training camp. But one thing that has become evident is they got more dudes on defense. And they got guys who can play. Devin Lloyd in the middle is going to make a gigantic difference this year. We got some Devin Lloyd content coming up that I think you people are going to like. We call that a tease. Devin Lloyd's going to make a huge difference in this team. Obviously, Jalen Phillips was paid a lot of money to rush passers and be a big impact. But just the depth in that secondary. J.C. Horn and Mike Jack are as good a tandem of corners as there is in the NFL. And now all of a sudden you got Will Lee, who looks like a competent player out there. We got Corey Thornton over here, who looks like a guy who can step in and play some good football. And Shaw Smith-Wade, who's been pretty solid and pretty dependable at nickel for the last couple of years. So they've got guys in those spots, and as they've developed depth on that side of the ball, I am probably going to say it way too much over the course of this year. But Dan Morgan's building this football team in a vision which he recognizes.
Yeah.
You know, he was on a team that went to a Super Bowl with a just okay offense, with a brand-new quarterback who got to turn around and hand it to Stephen Davis 300 times a season. And they got there because they were so good on defense. Now, is there a Julius Peppers on this team? Don't know. Is there a Dan Morgan on this team? Maybe, and Devin Lloyd.
Right.
We'll find out about that. But the one thing I know for sure is they've collected enough parts that all of a sudden that looks like a much better whole. Again, 2024, that team set all the wrong kind of records. They got up to the middle of the pack defensively last year. And I think what you've seen so far just from the talent acquisition phase of it and then a couple of days of training camp is maybe they're good.
Right.
Maybe that's a good defense this year and not just a good for them kind of defense as was often the case last year.
And what's also interesting is how purposely versatile they're building it. You know, we talked to Dave Canales and asked about Corey Thornton today, and he mentioned one of the things I like about Corey. Actually, let me get to Corey. I'm going to back up. I'm going to change how I approach this. Yeah. It was interesting.
Bernie's back there. He's hitting it. He's like, do I hit a button? Do I hit a button? Okay. Don't hit any buttons, Bernie. We're just going to roll with it.
He talked about Will Lee as well. And what was really interesting was he said the approach you take with Will Lee is the same approach we take with a lot of our rookies, which is let them focus on one thing to start. Let them master one thing and give them a little bit more each day. It's like when you feed a baby peanut butter for the first time. You know, you give them a little bit.
Waiting to see where this is going.
Or you give them strawberries or something. You know, you introduce solid foods and different types of foods very slowly to babies to let them see what they can take before you introduce something else. As kind of the approach they're taking with these rookies, let Will Lee focus completely 1,100%, that's a number, on the outside and master and dominate playing that, and then give him a little bit more the next day. A little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Corey is now at a spot where even though he was hurt and whatnot and buried a little on the depth chart for a little bit of last year, he has been around enough to know this system. They now know what he can do in it. And Canales mentioned today, you know, Corey can play nickel. He can play corner. He can play safety. And safety was a little bit of a surprise to me. I feel like it's been a while since we've had a Corey Thornton safety conversation.
Yeah.
But so when you said that,
Shaw's
it stood
getting
up.
A little run in there too.
And so then to that point, Shaw, who came in as an outside corner, got moved to nickel, has played a little safety here and there. And then, you know, Trayvon Merrick is your chess piece. You can just do whatever you want with him. And so much of that secondary, like you've got your three guys on your quote unquote like perimeter of the secondary. You know, J.C. Horn, Nick Scott, and Mike Jackson. Now you've got these other guys in the middle that you can really start to play around with and make it harder to figure out what they're doing if you're an opponent, because all three of them, and not to say they're all going to be on the field at the same time, but all three of them can do three different things. And it allows you to get creative.
Yep. And it's good. It's good having guys who can do multiple things. And again, the longer these guys have stayed in this system, and it's such an important fact for this team, is Avero and his defensive staff have been here basically for 3 years, you know, status quo in terms of personnel of coaches. They've got a consistent language. They've got consistent expectations. And now as they've built, you know, a little more familiarity into some of those people and added better people, the results are improving. So all good things there. But it is going to be interesting to see how this develops. I don't know what preseason games are going to look like. Again, Dave Canales has always been a guy who's who's leaned more into joint practices than preseason game snaps. But I want to see, as these guys get a little more time around each other, how this thing develops, because I'm starting to think the defense might actually be good.
It's July.
It's July. Specifically,
so far,
it's July 24th. Oh, my
what they
God,
tell
it's
me.
only July 24th.
That's what they tell me.
What on earth have we done with our lives?
It also, too, it feels like in training camp, the pendulum usually swings. Defense had a good day yesterday and today. Offense may have that good week next week. What happens when pads go on? What happens when you're in a joint practice against another team? And so it'll always swing a little bit, but it lands somewhere every time. And so where does it land? But right now it's definitely favoring the defense.
Yeah, it's favoring the defense. But like I said, as I watch those guys, the level keeps going up and up
True.
and up and up.
The bar is raised.
And they got to the middle of the pack last year. Now they're getting a little better. We'll see. I mean, again, there will be times when the offense swings back. I mean, I always get my training camp cliches confused. Is the offense always ahead of the defense this time of year, or vice versa?
Right.
It depends what week of training camp you're talking
what team
about.
You're covering.
Yeah. But listen, Bryce threw a couple balls today. You saw T-Mac make some catches, and T-Mac talked about the group of receivers as a whole. I mean, Chris Brazzell, we talked about yesterday about the play he almost made before Mike Jack carried him out of bounds. And XL had a good day today, made a couple nice plays. T-Mac coming off a Rookie of the Year season. They just extended Jalen Coker, and T-Mac kind of grinned. I mean, T-Mac's a laid-back guy anyway, but he kind of grinned. He said, I think people might be sleeping on us.
Yeah.
And so they've got
and you
weapons.
know what? I think he's right.
He might have a point. I mean, they've got some weapons, and that's even before you get into all the depth of the Mechis, the Jimmy Horns, the Bryson Tremaines, the David Moores of the world, who – we've talked all off season how deep that group was, but what you've seen a little bit at a time is some of those guys make plays.
Yeah, it's an exciting group, which is, again, why I think the pendulum will swing their way sooner rather than later. Very interested to see this group. I'm glad there's going to be another joint practice with the Texans. I feel like we learned a decent bit about this team, especially in hindsight. We learned a lot about this team last year in that Texans practice, even if we didn't know it at the time. And so what does it look like again? What does T-Mac with a year under his belt and Coker excel after a good offseason? Chris Brazzell is a rookie. What do these guys look like going up against that Texans secondary, which was just, not anything to sneeze at. And pretty good. I didn't want to completely hype up.
I mean, they're not J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson or anything.
Again, and you'll get that in Jacksonville as well. Wherever Travis Hunter is playing at the time, we'll find out when we get there.
Yep.
But excited to see how that group progresses. All that to say, I think T-Mac has a point. When you look at the talent there, the depth there, the production there, and the promise, all of those coming together create what should be a pretty exciting wide receiver group. When you're sitting there justifying to yourself and you're watching practice and you're going, can they keep 7? And even if they keep 7, who's this? Who do you cut? So when you're standing there doing that, it means that you've got some good problems on your hands.
Yep.
Because they all most of them offer something different.
Yep, no doubt. And it's one of the really interesting things about training camp. And like I said, it feels like we've been in training camp a week and a half or maybe 2 months already.
It's been 24 hours.
It's been 2 days. We will have more coming up for you. Like I said, I think there's a really cool story coming out on Panthers.com soonish, maybe in the next 24 hours or so, that I think a lot of you are going to enjoy.
On that note, I don't know if we have told people.
Don't give away
I'm sorry.
too much.
I'm not. I'm going to tell them everything that you are writing.
All right. Yeah.
On that note, I don't know if we have said this on the podcast yet. Don't forget, if you haven't already, to sign up for Training Camp Daily.
That's right.
That is an email that comes straight to your inbox, I believe, the next morning, something like that.
Yep.
And it will have the links to all of the stories, videos, podcast from the day before so that you can see and catch up on everything you need to from training camp. So go to Panthers.com
so many
and sign
cool
up for that.
photos coming your way each day, too. I mean, Our photo staff is better than it's ever been. We've got some incredibly talented shooters. I love these guys. There was an adorable picture today of Bryce Young walking out next to Lee Hunter. It was good, wholesome content. It wasn't quite Jimmy Horn and Cam Jackson from last year, but it is Bryce walking next to a very large man and making a new friend. So it was cool. It was good. We got all kind of cool stuff coming your way. So stay tuned to the Panthers.com. Stay tuned to the YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. Hit that like button, subscribe, whatever you young people do with the things. So the podcast, we got them all coming your way.
Yeah, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, and iHeart, anywhere you get your podcast. And you can also listen to us on Panthers.com through the podcast capability there.
I love tossing to her to say the names of technological things. This is why we're a good team. So speaking of good teams, we appreciate our good friends from Deep Eddy Vodka for sponsoring us yet again this year. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you, I don't know, at sometime next week.
Yeah, I think we should practice on Sunday.
We'll figure out the podcast schedule. I barely know what day it is.
Have your notifications on so when a new episode gets posted, you'll know.
What she said. All right, we appreciate y'all joining us on the Happy Half Hour.